Welcome to another video in the how-to series with Trend Micro. My name is Michael Clifford and I'm a support engineer here at Trend Micro. Today we're talking about the Apex One server considerations. So you finally made the step up, or you're making the decision to make the step up from your current Office Scan environment to Apex One, and you're wondering, what kind of things do I need to think about? So let's talk about some of the considerations that go along with this. EDR and integrated endpoint sensor are new additions to Apex One. So if you're going to utilize these, even in the future, you're thinking about utilizing the EDR functionality, then it's important to go ahead and set yourself up for success. And for this to occur, you need to be on SQL 2016 or above, the full version. SQL Express is not supported for endpoint sensor, and the full text search feature needs to be enabled. This full text search feature is specified during the install, or you can add it via the SQL installer later, such as if you have it already but you forgot that bit. Just run the SQL installer again. You can just select it and go on. Another important point is that the integrated endpoint sensor is a completely separate license. One of the major considerations is determining whether you're going to do an in-place upgrade or a migration. Due to the amount of changes from Office Scan XG to Apex One, the recommended path is migration to a new server. So there are some pros and cons that come along with this. The migration has far more pros than cons. So some of the pros for migration is easily controlled upgrade path. You can determine which agents to move, how to move them, and you have it set up on that server ready to receive those agents so you know how it's going to act. This allows you to test new modules, components, not affect your production very much. You won't move unsupported legacy OSs, so you don't have to worry about those being impacted. The only real cons to a migration is you do need to stand up a new server and you have to requisition the proper database resources. So there's also a little bit more work migrating the agents over. However, we have another video detailing that entirely, so you can pick a migration that works for you and see what each one looks like in action. So the in-place upgrade, if you decide to go this route, there's an increase in resources, so you're going to have to either feed your VM or upgrade your hardware in order to have the resource requirements for Apex One. And no agent migration is required since they're all on there. However, and this is part of the cons, if you have legacy operating systems on your agents, such as Windows XP or 2008, then you will have to stand up a new server and move them off before the upgrade because they're not supported on Apex One. So you might still need to stand up a new VM if you have those unsupported OSs. If that's the case, you might as well go the migration route and alleviate that kind of pressure so you don't affect your production that much. You will necessarily need to do a backup of the database and the server and follow disaster recovery practices in the event that something goes wrong during the upgrade, or else your production will be out during that period of time. There's an increased management cost doing an in-place upgrade. You have to verify that all of your policies are set such that the agents don't update right away once the in-place upgrade occurs. So those are the major things that go on. One of the biggest changes, at least communication-wise, that is likely to affect your environment is TLS 1.2 is mandatory and it cannot be disabled. So this means that necessarily the agents will communicate over the HTTPS port. So on Windows 7 and 2008 R2, for example, TLS 1.2 and 1.1 were not the default secure protocols that they communicated on. And there's Easy Fix MSI from Microsoft available to make this deployable through your environment to make sure those systems can communicate on TLS 1.2. Microsoft is also deprecating TLS 1.0, so they're pushing out patches and updates soon, or are currently, so that the Windows 7 and 2008 R2, for example, have to use SHA-2 in order to get their updates. So just keep an eye out for that. Keep your Windows updated or run this Easy Fix to maintain communications. If you do have, and some people will be familiar with this, the ASE equals 0 or use HTTP socket adapter set within your Office Scan INI file, this is deprecated. It will not work anymore. You cannot set it that way. So if you're using that to get around HTTPS communication, you're going to need to fix your HTTPS communication in your environment before updating. Digital signature checking has changed. If you're on build 5180 of SP1, then you have experienced this already, and it can't be disabled anymore. It'll log any issues. However, if your agents aren't updating regularly, specifically their certificate revocation list, then the agent will not update because it cannot verify the digital signature on the components or modules found on the server. So make sure that those certificate revocation list is up to date, and to keep your agents updating properly. So the Apex One server, it has a supported OS structure now that's a little different than XGSP1. Gone are the days of Windows 2008. So here we are, 2012 and above is required, and that's data center or standard. There are some SQL considerations. As we spoke of earlier with endpoint sensor, you're going to need 2016 and above, full version, and full text search feature enabled. Without endpoint sensor, in my environment, what I would recommend is 2016 and above, personally, and that can be Express or full version, either one. And if you're not using endpoint sensor, then full text search feature is optional. But we do support additional versions of SQL. And for the complete list, you could reference our Apex One system requirement PDF. Another thing of note, if you're on Codebase, that is gone. It's been removed from Apex One and it can't be used anymore. So if you're using Codebase, then you're going to have to move to SQL. It will move you in the in-place upgrade. However, you may want to just requisition those resources before you update so you know they're available. So a big item of consideration is your network topology and infrastructure. And there's a lot that goes on here, and it's unique for every environment. However, I want to name the biggest things going on in most networks. So one is the bidirectional communication of the on-premise agent and the Apex One server. So the server ports that you initialize during the install for the HTTPS and HTTP port must be reachable by the agents. That's an agent to server communication. So the agent listening port, and a special note if you're doing a migration, is to have the same listening port defined on your new one as the old one. Now, when you do a server migration itself, the server migration tool, it'll pull that over as well. However, just initially setting it up will alleviate any problems you might have later on. The server on the agent listening port needs to reach the agent. So this is how it issues commands and notifications for the agent to update and a bunch of other stuff. So it's important to have the agent or the server able to reach the agent on that port. So if you want further details on server and agent ports, you can check out that KB on the screen right now. And it gives a nice, concise way of evaluating what ports are open and what they're used for. So update agents are a very special consideration. These agents act as a central point for other agents to connect to in a defined subnet or range. So if you have a remote office, for example, and it's going over an MPLS, you don't necessarily want that traffic of those agents updating, going across that MPLS and saturating. So what you would do is you would set up an update agent to update the components in that in that remote location, and have those agents in that subnet or that location refer to that update agent for its updates. This reduces bandwidth and stress on the server, or bandwidth on your network and stress on the server. It reduces the update times on the agents since it'll be in parallel. You can have 50 agents updating on the server if you have it set that way, and also 50 agents updating from their update agent. So instead of being limited to 50, now you got 100. So if you keep on doing that out, you can update a load of agents very quickly. Optimally, I would pick an underutilized server, and the most success I've seen is with print servers or application servers. They normally handle a lot of incoming connections, so they're usually able to handle that type of stress and load. Another note is the update agent should be online at all times. If an agent reaches out for an update to the update agent and you have it set such that if it can't reach it, it'll go to the server, then it becomes a useless strategy. Or if it only reaches the update agent and it's set that way and it's offline, then the agent's not getting updated. Another important part is the agent's ability to work at its fullest extent. It does need to reach certain URLs on the internet, and a list of those URLs are located within this knowledge base. There's a lot of conversation about how much traffic is generated by an agent per day. So we've done a little bit of studying, and we found that about 3 megabytes on an Apex 1 agent is uploaded per day and about 9 down per day. Now, this doesn't take into account very highly structured like DLP policies that are searching for regex keys that equivalent out to star dot star. So if you have certain DLP policies that flag on everything, maybe you have like 100,000 DLP hits a day, then that traffic would necessarily go up. However, that would be the average. If you just have an average amount of stuff going on, uploaded 3 megabytes, downloaded 9 megabytes. So you can average that out over agents and figure out your bandwidth. The Edge server has a lot of new features, and I'll leave that to another video to go over. It's part of the new feature set. However, I want to go over the technical aspects of it. It is necessarily required in the DMZ, so you need to punch a hole between your Apex 1 server and the Edge server internally, and then externally, the agents need to be able to reach it through a publicly resolvable IP address or FQDN. One of the biggest things we've seen lately is SSL inspection and TTL transformations, usually within proxied environments. However, if you have any device or software that does SSL inspection, then this may cause issues. So our agent checks for man-in-the-middle attacks through digital signature checking. And if either one of those items are altered during the communication, it'll fail the check and it won't take that update. So whitelisting the URLs or bypassing the SSL inspection or bypassing the proxy for that agent connection may correct the issue within your environment. So this is the same link as before. I know I linked it a couple seconds ago, but these are the URLs you're going to want to go ahead and bypass in order for it to work correctly. And that's it. I mean, those are the major things to consider before jumping into Apex 1 from your current Office Scan environment. We'll likely have a lot more of these going on as more different issues pop up, and maybe we'll get into some specifics on how to fix those instead of just giving you the overview. So there's a lot of videos in our how-to series. I recommend checking them out, especially if you're thinking about the migration path. There's a bunch of migration videos, so hopefully those will guide you along your way. So until next time, have a good one. Bye.